Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and this morning I'm looking at a book which is a basic introduction to the law as we know it. It's published by Routledge and it's a book that I've found very helpful over the years. The title of the book is Law Made Simple. It's this book here, we'll have a look at it in a minute, by David Barker. It's now in a 13th edition and it's very useful for a range of different levels of study. Let's have a look at the book first of all. So I say it's from Routledge, which is a Taylor Francis group organisation, publication. There's the spine and there's the back. Probably see a little bit of what's in it. David Barker is a solicitor of the Supreme Court of New South Wales and the High Court of Australia, and Professor Emeritus, former Dean and Faculty at the University of Technology in Sydney. Now this is the book. It's not particularly heavy, it's just under 400 pages. At the back you've got a standard index, and then at the front, we'll just start off at the front, there's the front sheet itself, contents. It's always important to, you can see the huge amount of contents there, it's always important to read the preface. There are 13 main chapter headings, main topic areas which are covered, ending up with the European Union. There's a relatively short preface which sets out what Mr. Barker, Professor Barker, is intending to achieve. Obviously the reason he's produced this is because there have been a lot of changes since the last edition. There are cases there. And then we go straight in, there's legislation, and then we go straight into the main statutory instruments there, European Union law. Very useful list of abbreviations for people new to legal information, because there are a lot of these abbreviations which are a bit of a pain sometimes. Let me start off with the introduction. There's a key point right at the beginning which sets out what he's intending to do, so it's a logical introduction, the nature of law. Paragraph numbering, as you can see, which is on the sides there, again quite easy, that means you can find things out. Looks more of a sort of report format. You've also got a few diagrams. That's always useful to have a diagram of the structure of the English court system, the Supreme Court at the top. And as I say, you've got, it just generally runs through rather nicely with the various points that are made. And then right at the end there are some, quite often there are some exercises, a form of self-testing if you like, which is quite helpful just to see whether you're up to speed in terms of what you've memorized from what's actually in this, because remember, when you do an examination it is a memory test to a certain extent. There are some appendices. As I said, the last chapter 13 is on European Union law, and then what you've then got is some appendices. The first one being quite a useful little glossary of terms, which you can see there. And then you've got after that exam technique, again extremely helpful. We all produce our own versions of exam technique, but it talks about the sort of ways in which you can go through, and it gives some examples of what to do. Then there are some lists of abbreviations for law reports, which probably is very helpful for people who are get a little bit confused with what some of these things stand for. For instance, the All England reports and so forth. And these are the really old law reports from the past. I have to say they're not particularly relevant, because at the end of the day what we're now looking at is getting an overall picture of what the law is. And of course Law Made Simple is exactly what David Barker has done here. Now my wife and I have written a review of this book. Elizabeth had a look at it, but I've written most of this, and I've given it the title, An Excellent Primer for All Law Students Embarking on Their Legal Studies. And the reason I think it's useful is because it's a good teaching aid for tutors and lecturers. And David Barker has updated his excellent textbook, which explains the subject of law in easily understandable terms for students and non-students alike. As with all the Routledge textbooks, this particular title is probably the best on the market as an introduction to the way in which the law operates in England and Wales. One of the main reasons why we consider Routledge and their list of legal textbooks to be of outstanding value, both in terms of cost and in content, are the ways in which their commissioned authors, who are all legal experts, explain substantive legal issues in such a readable fashion. And so for both tutors and students, a decision on which textbook or revision book to use is always difficult, but it's clear to us from the feedback we've received from many learners that the Routledge texts lead the legal field, and obviously it covers a wide range of different types of product, if you like, from the textbook to the revision book to the Q&A to the law cards and so on. Many of their titles also have excellent links to websites, sometimes marked as companion websites. This one isn't, so you want to be well aware that in fact there is no companion website, but they are in a digital format for those who want that, as I understand it, as an e-book. But it depends very much on how you want to actually do your studies. As I say, the companion websites, which are a feature of many of the Routledge titles, are very useful because they're much more they can keep up to date, and the teaching tools are different. Some of them even have videos now as well as links, so that gives you an enhanced basically enhanced study exercise, and it's an experience, so it's well worth having. We've certainly found them of much assistance for hard-pressed learners. I teach distance learning, and that's important because obviously time is of the essence, because people are doing so many other things, running a home, having a family and running a business, or being involved as an employee. So we think this is a very useful book in its own right. The formats used by Routledge are also, once you get used to them, very actually user-friendly in my view, because their books are very much in a mainstream formula for legal textbooks, which eases the student into methods of legal reasoning for those just beginning their legal studies and for all undergraduates. And they certainly helped us with our preparation, so do ensure that you look very carefully at all the titles they have on offer, and do make sure that you get the most recent edition, because if you get old editions you're going to find that law has changed. David Barker, let me conclude by just saying, David Barker has been most successful in rewriting major parts of the original text for the 13th edition to reflect new and substantive legislative changes made by the two governments and their administrations over the last 7 years. The growth and influence, of course, of the European Union has also been well presented here to make this book the perfect introduction to what is a huge and complex subject for readers at different levels of study. Let me just remind you again of the book. It's not that heavy, it's 370 odd pages. Interesting here. This is on family law, provision of a will. See, just picking up anything. As I said, what you have got, for instance, in negligence, on the law of negligence, you've got a little area, case examples, because remember, the law of tort is very much about individuals and people, and of course the case law authorities are very important, so you've got a whole series of relatively short points about the particular cases, and I think that's quite useful because again, you're not going to remember everything with the cases when you're sitting the exam, so it's quite useful to know just a little bit. For instance, you've got another case example there, and how it fits in to the general legal rules. Again, let me just go, this is on law of contract. You've got the classic, the well-known famous cases like Feldhaus and Bindley, which you've got there, and so forth. And as I say, it's a very useful book. Again, criminal procedure, that has been updated to take account of a lot of changes. All in all, I'm very pleased with that book. I think it's a great, as I called it, an excellent primer. That's what it is. Thank you to Professor David Barker and all who've been involved in this for giving us an excellent contribution as both students and as tutors. It does help us immensely in explaining what the law is. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.